Hey, what's up guys? How's it going? This lesson is more on the CAGED system, okay? Or arpeggios, same thing as I explained in the first CAGED lesson, the introduction to CAGED. Basically, you're just playing arpeggios. So, this is kind of like a third level, okay? So, just to reiterate some of the previous lessons about what the first and second levels are, let's use the example. You have a chord progression: A minor, F major, C major, E major. Okay? Now that puts you in the key of A minor. Alright? So you know that you can play the A minor scale all over the neck of the guitar, right? Your full diatonic scale, your full natural minor scale. You can play, doesn't matter what the chords are, you just know that you're in the key of A minor. Alright? You can also reduce that to the pentatonic scale, just using 5 of the 7 notes of the diatonic scale. And you can play your pentatonic stuff. It's still in the key of A minor. You can also add in that blue note, do some blues licks, still in the key of A minor. You can also raise the 7th degree, that note right before the A, right before the tonic note. That's your harmonic minor note, if you want to add some flavor to your playing. But overall, you're just thinking key of A minor, okay? I'm in the key of A minor, so you're thinking scales. That's level 1, all right? I've given plenty of lessons about how to do that. Then you have level 2, which is the introduction to arpeggios and the introduction to the CAGED system. That's where you now start focusing on the actual chords that are in the progression, okay? So in this example, we have A minor, F major, C major, E major. So you're still using the same framework. You still know that you're in the key of A minor, therefore those notes are still available to you to walk around in, and it's still your path, okay? But now as the A minor is occurring, you're focusing on the notes of the A minor, which is A, C, and E. As the F major is occurring, you're focusing on the notes of that chord, F, A, and C. Same thing for the C chord, same thing for the E chord, all right? So I explained how to do that using arpeggio shapes and using the 5 CAGED shapes, which are really just arpeggios as well. They're just given a name, CAGED, okay? So now this is the third level. This is where we're focusing in even more on each specific shape of these CAGED shapes, okay? So now we're targeting the roots, thirds, and fifths of each of these CAGED shapes, okay? So it's even more specific. Now, this may sound intimidating, it may sound very difficult to do, but the good thing is that mastering level 1, just knowing how to solo within a key using a scale, could take a very long time. It could take years. Then learning how to actually focus on the chord tones and even reduce your focus even more to chord tone soloing, could also take a very long time, all right? But once you get that down, and you know these chord shapes, you know these CAGED shapes, just knowing where the roots, thirds, and fifths are within each of the shapes really isn't that much more difficult. So once you've mastered level 1 and 2, this isn't really that much more advanced, okay? Level 2 is really, just getting really proficient in level 2 is really what is going to be what turns heads, okay? Being able to target chord tones in your playing as opposed to just scale tones is the kind of thing that is going to make other intermediate guitar players look at you and think that you are a guitar god, because you're just hitting the perfect sounding notes at all times, okay? So just realize that this isn't that much more advanced than that, okay? Level 2 is advanced in and of itself. But you do want to have full control, okay? So by full control, I mean when you're hitting the roots, when you target roots of each chord, you're really strengthening the sound of the underlying chord. So if the rhythm section is hitting a C, and then you hit the C, you're really strengthening the sound in your solo, letting the listener know this is a C chord, okay? Same thing with the fifth. The fifth really strengthens the sound of the chord, letting the listener know, okay, this is a C chord, but it offers a bit of variance, okay? It gives you options. It allows you to switch up your playing so it still sounds interesting to the listener. Then you have your thirds, okay? So thirds are really, really beautiful, melodic sounding tones. So when you play the thirds of a chord as the underlying chord is occurring, it's just a very, very beautiful, that's the only way to describe it, it's just a beautiful sound. All right, so to be able to do this, to not just be able to focus on chord tones, but to be able to focus on the specific intervals of each chord tone, or of each chord as the chord is occurring, is giving you full control over your playing, okay? So with that said, I'm going to divide this lesson into 2 parts, plus I'm going to give a final words section at the end. So the first part is I'm just going to walk through each of the 5 caged shapes, and I'm going to show you where the intervals are located within each of the shapes, the root, thirds, and fifths. And then the second section, I'm going to do a musical example where I show how to implement a chord tone target practice routine, okay? So I'm just giving one example, but as we get to that section, you'll see how you can create one of these routines for yourself. But yeah, this is very, very beneficial stuff to learn, and you know, with that said, just follow along and see what you can pick up. Okay, so in this part, I'm just going to take another look at the 5 caged shapes, but now I have the roots, thirds, and fifths color coded, okay? So my color scheme that I'm using for all 5 shapes is roots are going to be red, thirds are going to be yellow, and fifths are going to be black. Okay, so it's going to be the same for all 5 shapes, and as I explained in the introduction to CAGED, that all these shapes are movable. So just because you're playing the C shape doesn't mean it has to be a C chord. Any chord can be played with any of these shapes, okay? So I'm going to use the E major chord for all 5 shapes. So I'm going to play the E major chord using each of the 5 caged shapes, and I'm going to point out where the roots are. So let's start out with the C shape, okay? So E major chord played in the C shape, okay? So for this shape, your pinky goes on the root. So your E is right here, 7th fret of the A string. Okay, so you put your pinky there, that's your root. Then you have your third, then you have your fifth, then you have your root, then your third, then your fifth. This one's actually kind of easy to remember because it goes in order. It goes root, third, fifth, walking up the arpeggio. Okay, so that's your C shape. Now we can move to our A shape. And as you know, your A shape is just your major bar chord. Okay, you probably already know this bar chord. So playing the E major using the A shape is like this. Okay, so your first finger goes on the root this time. So your first finger, root E, 7th fret, A string. So you have your root, then you have your fifth, then you have your root again, then your third's here, and then your fifth is here. So you have, okay, so in this shape you have 2 roots, 2 fifths, and 1 third. Alright, so that one may be a little harder, but it's still not too bad, you know. Once you know these shapes, it's really not hard to remember where the roots, thirds, and fifths are located in each shape. And as we get to the chord tone target practice part, in the next part, you'll see what I'm talking about. So that's the A shape. So now let's try to play the G major chord, let's try to play the E major chord using the G shape. Okay, so for the G shape, your root's located down here on the low E string. Alright, so your E is here, 12th fret, low E string. Alright, so you use your third finger, goes on the root. So you have the root, you have your third, you have your fifth, okay, you have your root, you have your third, and you have your root. So it's root, third, fifth, and then it's root, third, root. Okay, so that's your G shape. E major chord played in the G shape, and you don't have to play these as chords as I explained in the last lesson. This is just your framework for chord tone soloing. Alright, so that's your G shape. Alright, so now let's move on to our E shape. So we're playing the E major chord using the E shape. Alright, so the E shape is just your major chord, your major bar chord, rooted on the 6th string, rooted on the E string. Okay, so alright, so your E shape looks like this. You have your root here, played with your first finger. Then you have a 5th. Then you have your root. Then you have your 3rd. Then you have your 5th. Then you have your root again. Okay, so that's your E shape. Now the final shape is your D shape. Okay, so on the D shape, your root is located on the D string. Okay, so you have to find out where your E on the D string is. You have an E down here, and then you have an E up here. Okay, so we'll use the E up here for this example. So on the 14th fret of the D string, you have your note E. Your first finger goes on the root. So you have your root. You have your 5th. You have your root. And you have your 3rd. Okay, so that's your D shape. Alright, so that's your 5 CAGED shapes. Now you know where the intervals, the root, thirds, and fifths are located within each of these intervals. Alright, now if you wanted to play other types of chords, once you get really good at knowing where your roots, thirds, and fifths are, other types of chords come fairly easily, as long as you know how chords are created. And I made a lesson on how chords are constructed and whatnot, so make sure to review that lesson if you don't know. But you know that a minor chord is the same as a major chord, it just has a flattened third. So the third is flattened by 1/2 step. So if you know these 5 shapes and you know where your roots, thirds, and fifths are located, in order to make it a minor, you just take your third and you just move down 1 fret. Okay. Or if you wanted to do a 7th chord, okay, you know that a 7th is 1 whole step lower than the root. So if you know where your roots, thirds, and fifths are, you simply locate the root and then just play 2 frets lower, and that's where your 7th degree is. Okay, and then a major 7th is 1/2 step below the root. Okay, so the 7th is a whole step below the root, the major 7th is 1/2 step below the root. Okay, then you have diminished triads. So that's the same thing as a minor triad, but just with a flattened 5th. Alright, so if you know where your roots, thirds, and fifths are, you flatten the 3rd to make it a minor triad, and then you flatten the 5th to make it a diminished triad. Okay, and then you have augmented triads. So that's just a major triad with a raised 5th. Okay, so you find your 5th of the major triad, and you just go up 1 fret to raise it 1/2 step. Alright, so I mean that's a little bit beyond the scope of this lesson here, because I just want you to target roots, thirds, and fifths of each of these CAGED shapes for now. But once you get good at targeting these, which we're going to go over in part 2, then you're going to come to find that these notes are going to kind of light up. So you're going to see when a C major chord's occurring, you're just going to, all the notes of the C chord are going to light up. And then you want to even further, hone that in so that all the intervals light up. Okay, so once you're at that point, once all the intervals are lighting up and you see, okay, there's the root, there's the third, there's the fifth, it's really not that hard to alter these chords to make the chord that you're trying to make. Okay, so that's all I'm going to say about that for now. So let's take a look at part 2 about how you may set up a chord tone target practice routine for yourself. Okay, so this is an example of how you may set up a chord tone target practice routine for yourself. Now, you can do this in any way you want. You can use any chord progression you want. You can target whatever intervals you want. You can do this however you want. For the purposes of this demonstration, I'm just going to use the same chords I've been using for the last couple lessons. I'm going to use A minor, I'm going to use F major, C major, and E major. Alright, so I'm going to loop each chord for a total of 8 counts. Alright, so it's going to be A 2 3 4 1 2 3 4, F 2 3 4 1 2 3 4. Okay, so it's going to be 8 counts for each chord. I meant to say A minor, not A. Okay, so that gives you plenty of time to think, all right? And the frameworks that I'm going to be using, the scalar frameworks I'm going to be using is, number one, I'm going to use this home box right here. I call it the home box, your basic pentatonic area where all your scales are located. Okay, so you have this area. So I'm going to locate the A minor chord, the F major chord, the C major chord, and the E major chord all right in this area. Okay, and I'm going to target roots, thirds, and fifths in that order. All right, and then the next area I'm going to move to is I'm going to play in the 3-note per string area. Okay, so it's all diatonic. It could be major or minor, but we're in the key of A minor. So you have all these notes available to you. Of course, since we're in the key of A minor, A is your tonic note, so, but that's kind of irrelevant for the purposes of this lesson because we're focusing on chord tones and not so much scales, but that's still my scalar framework, okay? So that's the second area. I'm going to locate my A minor chord, F major chord, C major chord, and E major chord right in that area. And then the third area I'm going to do it in is my home box on the A string. Again, home box is just my term. I don't know if other people call it that, but these are the general areas I tend to fall back on more often than not. Okay, so you have your diatonic scale right here. Okay, so still key of A minor, just this area. So I have an A minor, I have a F major, and then I have a C major and an E major all located in this area. And then up here is just the same thing as down here, all right? So 3 areas. I'm going to do chord tone target practice, roots, then thirds, then fifths. So you'll see how I do this, and then we'll close this lesson out with some final words and see how you can incorporate this for yourself. Alright, so that was just a little example of how you may set up a chord tone target practice routine. Alright, so I just chose 3 positions. Those are my 3 favorite positions to play in. Every time I'm soloing, I'm usually thinking in terms of the home box that I call it, and then the home box on the A string, you know, same thing as down here except it's on the A string, and then the 3 notes per string diatonic pattern, you know. So I was just locating those caged shapes within each of those patterns for the A minor chord, the F major chord, the C major chord, and the E major chord, and I was just targeting roots, thirds, fifths, and in this position I was targeting the roots, thirds, and fifths, and in this position I was targeting the roots, thirds, and fifths. Now the reason I keep using this E major chord is because I want it to be clear that the E major contains an out of key note, and you know, I keep highlighting that note in orange to specify that that's not in the key of A minor. But that's one of the main benefits of doing this chord tone targeting stuff, because when you have a chord that contains an out of key note such as this, oftentimes you really want to highlight that specific note, because that's really helping to outline the sound of the music, okay, the underlying chord progression that's going on in the background. So you can set this up in any way you want. I did 8 counts per chord. You know, I had it be A minor 2 3 4 1 2 3 4, F 2 3 4 1. So I gave myself plenty of time to think. But you can do it 4 counts per chord, or you can do it 2 counts per chord, or you can switch it up in any way you want. You know, you can do roots, then thirds, then fifths, and then switch positions, or you can do roots, then fifths, then thirds, or you can do third. It doesn't matter. And you don't always have to stick to just roots for every chord or just thirds for every chord. You can switch it up however you like, whatever your ear determines is going to be the best. You do that, but this is just practice. This is repetitions, so you really know where your roots, thirds, and fifths are located at within each of these shapes, because ultimately you want to have the control to be able to do this, okay? You want to be able to have the control to not only think in terms of scales, not only think in terms of chord tones, but you also want to have the control to be able to think in terms of intervals, okay? Because, as I said, that's really how you get to express the most out of your playing, okay? So hopefully this was helpful. If you have any questions or whatever, if I left anything out, feel free to ask. Hope you enjoyed it.